I have my own show. It's named after, or it's got my name attached. I need no introduction usually, so yeah. I never actually considered that there's somebody new listening to my own show, and I maybe should be conscious of that from time to time. I remember seeing a thing where it was a recommended thing where it's like, treat every episode as if it's a brand new audience viewing it. I was like, I don't want it. Mm-hmm. It's like, I know the audience I'm making this for, so like I'm not going to worry about the other ones. You know what I mean? But yeah, anyway. So, I don't know.
Okay. Today we're talking about the art of movies. With us, we have Caleb Braley, a movie fanatic and a cultured movie connoisseur in modern movies of our time and older movies.
Some, yeah. It is funny because I am seen kind of like by a lot of my friends and stuff and family as the movie guy. And then I'll meet an actual person that's really intense about them. And they're like, have you seen this movie? And it's some movie that everyone that's in the film circle has seen from like 1962 or something. And I go, yeah, no, I haven't seen that one yet. And then they're like, oh, it's just a one-off. Okay, he hasn't seen that classic film. What about this one from like 1954? I'm like, yeah. No, I haven't seen that one either. Then they're like, what about this? So the older decades, I definitely haven't watched as much of. The oldest film I've seen is Nosferatu.
Okay.
Which, so I've seen the, classic Nosferatu, which I didn't know until I was recording my episode on the new Nosferatu, that was like, basically like copyright laws still existed back then in like, 1922 or whatever. And it was like Bram Stoker's Dracula, but they couldn't make Bram Stoker's Dracula because they didn't have the rights to it. And so they made Nosferatu, but it's basically the story of Bram Stoker's Dracula novel. So
okay, so if you're into more of the modern movies, I feel like when I watch modern movies, I only do it because one of my friends calls me and they're like, have you seen blah, blah, blah? And then I'm able to talk to them about something. Do you think that's why you watch the modern movies? Or are you like, what is it about this that gets you going?
Yeah, I think that's part. So I definitely, once I started my podcast especially, I wanted to be part of the modern conversation was a big part of it, where I said, well, I got to see everything that's new. Right. And then I'm watching so many new movies that I don't have as much time for older ones. And then when I do watch an older one, I'm like, well, I can't do an episode on this.
Right.
Because sometimes it's like I'm just too dumb to talk about the older.
And who knows about it, too, right? When you've got all this marketing flooding everybody's social medias, everybody's thinking, Wuthering Heights, or they're thinking Summer I Turned Pretty, so that makes sense.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Well, it's like I know that some of the more thought-provoking movies I see, one, I'm definitely way too dumb to cover all the themes of it. I end up just sitting there, I'm like, this was an interesting movie, and I don't have a whole lot to offer. Like, I have so many thoughts, but I can't really put them together.
Right.
And at the same time, it makes for my worst episodes for sure. And then even sometimes there are ones where I feel like I really get the movie and I talk about it in great detail and no one listens because it's a movie they haven't heard of. Right. And the concept of it's kind of boring to them. I remember covering Blade Runner 2049 and it wasn't new at the time. It was just Christmas time and I see it as a Christmas movie because there's snow. And,
classic.
Yeah, well, there's snow, and it's the story of a miraculous birth that gives hope to a people that feel like they're almost irredeemable in the sight of the world.
That's beautiful, actually. Yeah. Blade Runner is a Christmas movie.
Yeah, well, to me, it very much is, and so I watch it every Christmas season. And
stop! Wait, that's actually hilarious. I love that.
I do. Well, it's funny. There are a few movies that I watch during like Halloween, Thanksgiving. There really aren't Thanksgiving movies.
No, that's valid. That's valid.
But yeah. No, Thanksgiving movies. There's Freebirds.
Ew, I hate that movie so bad.
I was just on TV 2 weeks ago, and I was watching it, and I was like, oh, I forgot Woody Harrelson's in this one. And it came out the same weekend as, I think it was Catching Fire or Mockingjay. Mockingjay? Yeah, Mockingjay Part 1. It was one of the Hunger Games movies, because I remember I got blocked on social media over this because there was this girl who's like been in line for the movie for like 2 hours. It's about to start because you used to have to wait in line for movies if you wanted to see them opening night, if it was a big movie. And she was like, "Oh, so excited for this." And I replied, "Freebirds?" ? And I got blocked. But yeah, they came out the same weekend. And I still think, I stand by the joke. I think it's a funny joke. And that's a Thanksgiving movie. In theory, though, it is kind of an interesting one because Freebirds, he's like, what if instead of turkey, we ate pizza for Thanksgiving?
Gang.
I think that's a good thing.
I think one of the reasons... Okay, so I watched Freebirds growing up, right? And my mom was like, "We're not watching this movie. This movie isn't appropriate," is always what she'd say. But like, come on, it's like an animated movie about chickens. Anyway, and the reason was, her and my grandma both really stood on 10 toes about that. She's like, "It is God's plan to kill these chickens and eat them. God gave us animals to have sustenance, and anything that villainizes that is like, not in my book appropriate." So we weren't allowed to watch Freebirds. Anyway, and as an adult, that's how I feel too.
There is one shot in the movie, speaking of appropriateness, you're like, yeah, it is like a kid's animated movie. There is one shot in the movie that if my parents walked in during that shot, I'd be like, "Oh, whoa." It's like they're wrestling and randomly it's like his legs are up in the other guy's face and vice versa. I was like, whoa. How did this happen? I was watching Justice League Unlimited, which it's a kid's show I watched when I was younger.
Right.
And there was a random episode where I'm rewatching the show like 5 years ago, living with my parents, and my mom walked in during one scene where it looked like something was happening that was not happening. It was characters wrestling.
That's hateful when that happens.
And she's like, "What are you watching?" It's like, okay, come on. If I was watching something crazy, it wouldn't be a cartoon. You know, it's like, and also like, you think I'm watching that in the family living room at, 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon? That's crazy. But yeah, that's, that moment in any movie that's like slightly compromising is always when your parents walk in.
Always. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a radar. Okay, so tell me. It's conversation. That's one of the things. You want it to be in the conversation for modern day movies, but that can't be like your driving force behind everything that you watch. Is it like, I don't know, like the lights, the way the lights, the music, the sound, everything comes together? Did you do theater? Did you do anything? Like what is it that drives you?
I acted in a play when I was like 9 years old, and I did an audition for the biggest role because I was like, well, I don't want the biggest role. That's going to be too difficult. And then the guy who ended up getting that was just, I could have done so much better.
I hate it when that happens.
Well, because I was like, well, I don't know if I can fill these shoes. And then this guy did it, and I was like, okay, well, I could have done that.
Right.
So it's fine. I had like one line read in it. It's whatever. But no, I always liked movies as a kid. I grew up on Star Wars. I probably rewatched the opening 20 minutes to half hour of Return of the Jedi over and over again. Empire was my favorite movie overall, but Return of the Jedi, I loved the opening of it so much. Like Boba Fett was so cool, even though he kind of goes out like a chump in that movie. But I really loved those movies. And then time passes by. I mentioned, like, I grew up watching a lot of like Justice League Unlimited. I watched Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series. We had so many Batman action figures at my house, it's not even funny. And so Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight trilogy started to launch when I was right around the age where you're really starting to get a bit of what you're watching. So Batman Begins came out. I thought it was really good. The Dark Knight came out when I was 12 probably. And that was just a huge movie. I was very annoying about that for years. Anytime someone's like, I like this movie, it's really good. I was like, it's not as good as The Dark Knight.
Right.
And so, but that was kind of, eventually I discovered that there were actual voices making these movies. And it wasn't just like, oh yeah, this movie's good because the character's cool and it's good. Like, because there were plenty of bad Batman movies.
You started to just look into the background of filmmaking more.
Yeah, once I saw, because the Dark Knight trilogy caps off, and then the movie Interstellar comes out, and I remember being wowed by that. And then I saw some of this director Christopher Nolan's other movies. I watched The Prestige, and it's amazing. And Inception also came out in the middle. It came out after The Dark Knight, before The Dark Knight Rises. And I just love those movies so much, and I thought, okay, well, Christopher Nolan's great. I know I like George Lucas because I grew up on Star Wars. Steven Spielberg's great. And then I thought, well, even as a child, I can tell the difference between these movies. Like, there's something about how their movies look and feel and everything that's different. And I didn't quite understand everything that made these films work, but I could at least see the signature style of these filmmakers. And I think that was kind of the thing that made me really start to appreciate film as a medium.
And it was just like interesting to you how all the pieces came together, or?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of cool how certain guys were able to make great movies by doing things differently. And like, I love Guy Ritchie, who did the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movies, and then his movie The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Those movies have so much style, and they're made so different than some of these other films that I just thought, this is a guy whose mind is in a completely different place than all these other guys in his field, but is still able to make something really great. And even like the way the music works into those movies, because I was in orchestra growing up.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm not quite a musician as far as like, I couldn't compose music that everyone would appreciate. I tried to compose music once and it was really bad because I was doing my own podcast and I said, well, I should have intro music. And I said, you know, it would be cool if not only was I the one funding this podcast, which I was, you know, paying for everything.
Of course.
So I was like, I'm going to be funding it. I'm going to be recording it. I'm going to be editing it. What if I just made my own intro music?
Oh, now this is epic.
So yeah, I got GarageBand and I was messing around because I have a brother who kind of is the same. He and I were in orchestra together. And my brother has done this where he's written books and he also does a lot of artwork that he self-taught himself. And he's just done stuff where he's like, yeah, I want this character in this book. Here's what they look like, and he'll just draw them and like post that on his Instagram. Like, this is this character, and describes it. And I remember him making music to go with the pictures where he said, this kind of captures the vibe of this. So I was like, well, if he can do it, I can do it, because we both were in orchestra together. And yeah, I found after like 2 hours on GarageBand that I could not do it. And the default sounds that I could use, and those would work. And the old intro for my pod had a good tune to it anyway, and I would lie and say it was my own, but it was not. It was one of the default ones. But yeah, I don't know. Sorry, it's something about the music I was talking about. So I just know, like, I'll watch some of these directors' movies, and they all have. I think most of my favorite directors have really good original scores in their films. Sometimes they work with the same composers, but sometimes they don't, and they still manage to have a similar sound. And that was, I think Interstellar was the moment where I realized that that was a really big part, that it wasn't just that, you know, they hire a guy, he does the music, and there's that. Hans Zimmer, who should have probably won an Oscar for his score for Interstellar, He talked about how he sat down with Christopher Nolan and they talked in great detail about the sound of the movie, what they wanted it to sound like, how they wanted the score to play into the story. And that's something that I subconsciously probably appreciated growing up, that now with certain composers and directors, I pay close attention to the score, because I know that there are conversations that they have of, hey, I really want the music to do this in this scene. And it's always the most noticeable in like horror movies, where they always have like this was our orchestra teacher back in high school had talked about, if you watch a horror movie with the sound off, it's really not very scary. Which mostly true. There's some though that still scare me, but for the most part, like you could watch a horror movie with the sound off, and that's when you realize like how much sound design plays into it and how much the music plays in. Even the silent films like Nosferatu in 1922 still had like a bit of music in the background, and I don't quite know how they did that. I never looked into it. I just know there are a few string sounds and all that, and so yeah, I don't know. It's crazy how it's evolved over the years, but that's another thing that I really look at is I've always appreciated the music in movies, and it wasn't until I think Interstellar that I realized how much that was actually a conscious decision by both filmmaker and composer, a collaboration between the two. And I think that's something that I have kind of changed my mind on a little bit over the years. Originally I just said, this director is great, therefore all of his movies are great. But it's also a talent to bring in people that are highly talented and being able to work with them on what they're good at and maybe merging your visions or aligning your visions is the better way to put it, where you're able to all come together. Like Christopher Nolan, again, I'll come back to him because he shaped a lot of how I viewed filmmaking. His movie Tenet, he had Ludwig Göransson scoring the movie, and that was the first time Ludwig, maybe the second time, I think Ludwig maybe did Dunkirk before that, don't remember. But Ludwig brought in Travis Scott to do a song for the movie, and I thought, you can't find me two more opposite guys than Travis Scott and Christopher Nolan. And yet it completely works. Like the sound of the movie works so well, and the end credits song with Travis Scott fits perfect with the vibe of the movie. I even pitched a friend who's really into music, not as into movies, and I was selling him on the movie, and I said, you know what, listen to the song The Plan by Travis Scott. If you like the vibe of that, then watch Tenet. And he freaking loved it.
Wow.
Like, and he was telling me, he's like, I kept that in mind, where I was like, I don't get a lot of what's going on here, but I just was like in it, and I felt it, and like I appreciated it. So I don't know. So
that's actually something I'm really curious about. I feel like with every artist, it's different. And I do view you as an artist when it comes to watching movies and being able to talk about them and think about them. Like, when I watch a movie, I think I see it as you explained yourself watching movies when you were a kid. Like, I can really appreciate it. It's something that I'm cool talking about, but I haven't ever really dove into anything where I see where these pieces come together. So if you could you describe when you go to watch a movie, and I think you've mentioned you'll watch them multiple times, so maybe that's a part of your deconstruction process, but what is it like through the lens of a critique, a movie critique?
Yeah. That's, I would say the more I've known, the less I've been able to enjoy movies sometimes. It's like,
that's actually so real.
Yeah, there's so many things that I just start nitpicking, but then every so often a movie just hits, and it's like just the most spiritual experience.
What's that like when it just hits? Is it like something where you just forget all of the other elements because you're not thinking, oh, lighting, whatever, just because it works so well, or what?
Yeah, once I can't even explain how it happens. It's just like I become immersed in the movie, like where I'm just not thinking about anything else. Like I'm there. I think when Dune Part 1 came out, I remember not even loving the movie as far as entertainment goes, but I was fully immersed the entire time. And so I said, I don't know how I feel about this movie on first viewing, but I loved the experience, and I feel that everything that they did to make this movie was to create that atmosphere. Like the sound of the movie, the look of it, and everything was so different than anything I'd seen. And I just felt like I was spending like 2.5 hours on Arrakis, even though I wasn't quite understanding everything or appreciating everything. And then on rewatch, I liked the movie a lot more. But that's like, I just saw Project Hail Mary.
Okay.
And I just rewatched it in IMAX 70 millimeters, which interesting tidbit here is there are only a handful of true IMAX theaters. Like you can see stuff in digital IMAX, and it's not even close to being the same. It's like it's so much crisper when it's on pure 70 millimeter film. And so there are only like 27 of those in the country. And I think like 10 are at like science observatories and stuff. So as far as ones that are used for commercial use, we have one of like maybe a dozen or a couple dozen that are even available for people to watch movies at in the entire country. So that's kind of a neat thing about where we live. Randomly, it's at the Arizona Mills Mall. So yeah, but yeah, no, I saw Project Hail Mary there. And before I had seen it in Dolby, which is a really good option as well. But it just like was one of those films that the score was immediately like pulling me in. I thought it was so good. Visually, it's just tremendous. And Ryan Gosling's in it. Every guy, there's like a running meme on film Twitter, especially. Ryan Gosling is literally me, is kind of the meme. Like, it's because he plays so many loner characters that almost every loser you'll ever meet is like, that guy's me.
That's hilarious.
And so, because his characters are always like so quiet. In this one, he's not. He's very chatty. More like he is in The Fall Guy, probably, where he's just super chatty. But yeah, I don't know. That was the one recently where presentation-wise, I was just like fully in watching. It helps that it's sci-fi though, because sci-fi is like what brought me into movies, and so if I see a great sci-fi movie, I'm just like in it. But yeah, it does definitely. There are movies that I have a hard time enjoying, and well, I don't want to. I want to dump on any popular movies. I'll just say that I'll see some that I can't help but be distracted by how visually ugly they are. And it's like where it looks like a Verizon commercial at times, and it just drives me insane. Like that there are people working, and I know that the job is so hard now that the cameras are so good that they capture so much light that other cameras didn't used to. And the fact is, you don't want everything fully illuminated in a shot, but cameras now are so good that it's really hard to not like capture stuff you don't want in a shot. And so it takes a lot of skill to make something look good in camera these days. I watched this thing. I was re-listening to an episode. I don't actually listen to my own episodes a lot. I only do it maybe just to make sure everything went smoothly. But I had a friend that told me they listened to an episode, and I said, I don't remember if I said anything compromising in this one. And so I went to re-listen to it, and I went on this like tangent where I talked about how the movie The Parent Trap looks better than most blockbusters today. And it was off this YouTube video I watched where the guy talked about how he talked about a few things, but one of them was just like it was partly the cameras they were using then versus now, where even though we have better cameras now, it's kind of to the detriment of the filmmakers at times when they don't know how to use it. And also apparently the clothing that people wear in movies has gotten more bland because the digital cameras can't pick up if it's like a striped outfit. I think it throws it off. I don't remember. It's like certain colors and certain patterns kind of don't capture well in camera. It's a weird thing.
I totally believe that too, because I saw, and I know it's something that's kind of going around, but it's this side by side of an actress who, and I'm blanking on her name right now, but who used to do a lot of early 2000s movies, and she just filmed one recently, and it's like so colored saturated, in those early 2000s movies, and now it's just so bland, for lack of a better word. And yeah, I was always curious, and I think everybody in the comments was like, oh, why do this? Bring the color back, blah, blah, blah. But if there are a bunch of things in the background that you just don't know about, that's a hilarious reason too, is just the cameras have gotten too good that they're picking up things.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like, it's hard to capture a wide range of colors when everything's overexposed, and that's kind of just how a lot of it is, I guess. So, I don't know. That's another thing. When I got really into film, I said, maybe I'd like to make movies. And then I tried practicing shooting some things, and they all looked horrible. And I said, you know what? I like reviewing them.
Maybe not.
Which my theory is that a lot of movie critics had the same thing, where they're just like, yeah, I'd love to make a movie, and then they made one and it was freaking terrible, and then they're like, what if I reviewed them instead?
Hey.
Yeah, I think I understand these and I just don't want to make them. But for me, it's like, I would love to make this. I just know I can't do it. So, I'll write movies that'll never get made, and otherwise I'll just rip apart ones that do get made. I actually try to be pretty kind to them, though, just because I think that even when a movie doesn't work, that there's still a lot of talent behind the camera, and that it's really hard to make it all work. There's so many factors, like especially when you're dealing with big studio movies and stuff. It's you have to make so many compromises as an artist. Like if you're working for Disney, I feel bad for any director that takes a Disney job, just because I know even if they have great ideas, you're probably not going to see a lot of their great ideas. You're going to see like a focus group version of the story they had in mind, which is unfortunate. Like the latest Snow White was that, where I said that probably could have been great if they were allowed to take bigger swings, and instead it was like pretty bad, unfortunately. But yeah.
So in my first semester of college, so I did theater in high school, and it was like my undying passion, and I was like, dream goal, movie star. It was gonna happen for me. And so when I first started out college, I took an intro to theater class, and it turned out to be, and I'm not making this up, like it can't be more literal, it turned out to be how to be a good audience member class. That's what the class was. And being a freshman, and I was so scared, I was like, I don't even know how to drop classes, I'm just gonna like stick it through. And so I did. And I felt like I just learned so many odd things. I don't know. And so in your opinion, and this kind of goes back, but I'm just wondering if you have like almost a checklist of things you look for. You sit down, you have a movie you're about to watch or dissect. Like, what does that look like from start to finish? How many times do you watch it? If you do watch it more than once, why? What are you looking for?
So I think the one thing is it kind of depends on the type of movie I'm going to see, where I do try to adjust like if I'm going to see an animated kids movie, I just say, can this keep me engaged and can it make me laugh as an adult? And at the same time, I will review those movies and say, you know what? The kids in my theater were laughing. Or if there were kids in my theater, they probably would have been laughing. So it does depend on just the type of movie it is. And so with kids' movies, I do look at it through a lens. I'm kind of grading on a curve, is what I would describe it as, where some things aren't quite as important. But at the same time, there are things that can be good regardless. And so visuals are the number one thing that I look at in a movie.
In every movie.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'll get people that are like, well, there's more to a movie than that. And I'm like, there's more to a motion picture than the picture. Like, I get that there's other stuff, and I appreciate the other stuff, but literally these movies started with just the picture. Like, that was, it was the power of the image. Yeah. And so I look at that, where that's why I said, like, I hate on some popular movies because they're ugly. I hate looking at them.
That's actually so real, though, because I feel like you could watch a movie and it could have the most beautiful soundtrack, most beautiful, acting, whatever. But if it is not appealing to watch, I'm not watching it.
Yeah. No. Well, yeah. You don't want to just sit there and suffer through an eyesore of a movie. And sometimes you may not even consciously notice that it's a bad looking or flat movie. But subconsciously, there's going to be some disconnect there. And you won't know why, but there will be a disconnect. And so visuals are one of the number one things I look at. And it's just because, like, there is power in the image, and there is a story to be told within the frame if that's the intent of the filmmaker. And that's why I think some of these movies that I hate on so much, they're these big studio movies, there's really no vision that I'm seeing. It's just they're shooting scenes. Right. Like a lot of the live action Disney remakes, it's like you're just shooting scenes to kind of copy the animated movie, and you're losing a bit of the power of the original image in doing that. But I think that's the number one thing that I'll look at is just what I'm literally seeing. And then next, I do notice the score always in a movie. If there's even one decent moment of original score in a movie, or if they have a needle drop of like some random like Beatles song plays at a point in the movie and it works really well, I'll notice that. It's distracting when they pick a bad song for a movie, or where there's a movie with a soundtrack that shouldn't have a soundtrack. But, you know, that's like another thing. It's,
So, favorite movie, least favorite movie. What are some of the... Can you give me like maybe your example of favorite, least favorite, and what differentiates the two?
Yeah, least favorite's tough for me because I don't have a lot of movies that I just like actively hate. They're just a lot that I'm very disinterested in. So I feel like that one will be kind of tougher for me to think about. Favorite movie, you know, the thing is I always tell people it's Interstellar. And it is true. I do love Interstellar a lot. And it probably most days is my favorite. My actual favorite though, and this is the funniest thing, because people hear it, they're like, you watch all these movies and you love this movie that everyone thinks is terrible. Yeah, I love the director's cut of Batman versus Superman.
Wow.
I used to watch that movie constantly, and I go back to the image thing, where and people will even tell me, they're like, well, there's more to a movie than the visuals, but that is one of the most visually rich blockbusters I've ever seen. It's one that I've watched so many times, and there are so many parallels to actual pieces of like Greek art and architecture and things like that throughout the movie. There are a lot of lines of dialogue. The guy who, he sort of rewrote the movie. He did the screenplay for it. The first draft was done by David Goyer, who wrote the Dark Knight trilogy with Christopher Nolan. Chris Terrio was brought in to do the screenplay, and he's like this English major, and he had all these literary references just riddled throughout the movie. And so there's some really clever wordplay in a lot of scenes that I appreciate, but it's the visuals of the movie are just so incredible, and they enhance the themes of the movie so well that it's a huge parallel to Moby Dick in some ways. Batman's entire story is a parallel to Moby Dick, and that's why, like in the third act, he's using a spear that's meant to look kind of like the harpoon.
Is that something that you
Ahab
ever look for? Is like little ties to classic literature and filmmaking?
It's not something I typically look for, but every so often I'll see something that seems familiar, and then I just can't stop looking at it, and then I look and say, what is this a reference to? And there's like, in that movie, there's like the Moby Dick, Captain Ahab, like plot line basically for Batman, but at the same time there's the yin-yang effect throughout the movie. And there's so many shots where you see the bourgeois like symbol like in the shot basically, where you are literally seeing the yin and yang effect. And so it's just a fascinating thing where for this movie that's thought of as this big dumb blockbuster, it has probably some of the most thoughtful cinematography of any movie I've seen. And so that's one that I throw that out there mostly because I know a lot of people either don't like the movie or never gave it a chance because they heard it was bad. And so I'll throw that one out there as my favorite sometimes. But it's like, it's up there with, I love Interstellar and I love Blade Runner 2049, which again is just a movie with like, I think a rich story, and the visuals are beautiful. The score is good. There's some really special performances, and so I look at the acting too. It's like, do I believe the guy that's in this role? Does it feel like they're playing, it's just a guy playing a character, or do I see them as this character throughout the movie? And I like stuff like that a lot too, of when after the movie, I don't really think of the character as the actor or vice versa.
I love that, yeah.
I watched the movie Richard Jewell, and John Hamm's character in that movie, he's an FBI agent, and he is the worst, where I wanted to send death threats to John Hamm after watching Richard Jewell, but that's how good he was in that movie. Then I was like, man, is not the nicest guy, but he's not as bad as he is. Okay, in real life, he might be worse than Richard Jewell.
He was just channeling his
He was a college bully. Don't look into why he got kicked out of the University of Texas. It's really bad. Fully immersed in a role, and so I don't know, a lot of things there. But as far as favorite movie goes, I love the themes of the movie. I love when there's just rich visuals that I can't stop thinking about, where they enhance the story, they enhance the themes of staying power probably when they look that good. As far as worst movies or least favorite, it's really tough for me because I feel like there's one that I really hate and I don't quite know what it would be off the top of my head. The only one that keeps coming to mind is Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. And it's interesting because that was one I kind of defended when it came out, but it's pretty much everything that I complain about with movies, other than the fact it does visually look pretty good. That is one thing I'll say, is that visually it does look pretty good, but it's mostly just it's shot by a very competent director, and so it looks good. It's not that the visuals are enhancing the story or themes. It's just the movie looks good, the visual effects are good. But that one I hate from a writing perspective because it feels like a movie made by several committees that all had different ideas and several executives that all had different ideas, which was exactly what happened with that one. And so I didn't even have to know the backstory of the movie to watch it and say, that's a mess. You know what? Actually, I do have one. Justice League 2017. That one, that's probably, I have that one worse than Rise of Skywalker because not only is it a movie that was made by a bunch of different people, a bunch of different committees, and reshot like crazy, rewritten like crazy, it also has really bad acting performances. It has some of the most cringy dialogue I've ever heard in my life. The music is bad. It brought in Danny Elfman, who's a legend as far as composers go, but he put together one of the worst scores I've ever heard. He should retire just because of that. It was so bad. And then visually, it is probably also one of the ugliest movies anyone will ever see. They put this nasty filter over them. It's just so oversaturated, and it's because people had spent the last few years complaining that all the DC movies were too dark. And so they're like, well, how about we take this movie and we make it really bright and colorful. And it looks like you took a photo on your phone and you put the saturation at 100. That is what the entire movie looks like. It's so bad. And on top of that, Henry Cavill, for the reshoots of this movie, he was about to film Mission Impossible Fallout, where he had a mustache. Oh. And what's funny also is that none of these actors wanted to do reshoots, including Henry Cavill. And so they're like, you have to shave the mustache. And he goes, no, I can't. It's for my role in Mission Impossible. And most people believe that to this day. But I have it on good authority that the mustache was Henry Cavill's idea for the role. And they did not require him to have it for Mission Impossible. And so he basically was like, I just don't want to shave this. I think it looks good. I want it for my Mission Impossible movie. I'm not shaving. So he didn't shave. And so they had to do a CGI mouth for, I'm serious. If I remember watching the opening scene of this movie, and it's a close-up shot of Henry Cavill, and it's one of the reshoots, and I legit thought it was some weird meta thing in the movie where I said, are they at their world?
It's insane.
I seriously thought, I was like, are they at their universe's version of Disneyland, and this is a guy in a Superman costume? And I went, wait a minute, that sounds kind of like Henry Cavill. And then I realized, oh no, that's Henry Cavill. Okay, they just CGI'd a mouth over him. And it's like they used to do not Bob Odenkirk. It was Steve Odenkirk, the guy who did Thumbtanic, Thumb Wars, all the Thumb movies. Basically, it would just be thumbs, and they would have a CGI mouth over the thumb on these old I watched them on YouTube. I don't know where they originally aired.
They were a masterpiece. I love them.
Oh yeah, no, they're so good. And there was a Bat Thumb Forever or whatever, and that was just so funny. But that is what Henry Cavill looks like in the movie. He looks like one of the thumb characters from that. So that movie, definitely up there. It tries to be funny. It is so unfunny. It is ugly to look at. The score is terrible. The director is bald. Like, it's like everything about the movie is so bad. Now, there's nothing wrong with being bald, by the way. We all know, like, every cool Breaking Bad character is bald. Yeah. And I'm like 10 years off from that, too. So it's like nothing wrong with that. It's just, I don't like the director that they brought in for that. So basically, 2017 Justice League. It's nicknamed Justice League because the director who reshot its name is Joss Whedon. So they called it Justice League.
That's good.
Yeah, that's definitely at the bottom of my list of movies. And it's because literally everything I appreciate about movies was lacking or just outright awful in that movie. So that one, that's the one. I like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs too.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's another...
Got good visuals.
Well, we had talked about kids movies earlier and how I grade those on a curve, but there are some kids movies that look so good. Or like all the things that I'm softer on with other kids movies that like these ones do nail. Like the Spider-Verse movies nail that too. They're like the best looking movies ever. The score, soundtrack is amazing. And Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Fantastic Mr. Fox, and Case. Those are some of those animated movies that sort of are for kids, I guess, but I appreciate them as a grown adult because they're still funny. They still look good. Yeah, sorry. I know I get really intense about some of this stuff, but it's always fun.
I love it. Well, thanks for coming on, Caleb.
Happy to be here.
Where can they find you?
Oh, yeah. So right now I'm on a bit of a hiatus. I'm releasing episodes less regularly. I used to do weekly, but you can find me. I'm on Instagram. The username is Vitamin C. That's SEE pod. And you'll see reels mostly from older episodes on there. And I'll share on my story just, tidbits of movie news. And I'm on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, Vitamin C. Again, it's SEE. Some people get thrown off, but it's a play on words. So that's where you can find me.
Well, thanks.